On today's show, an annual tradition with Glen Willis of ATL and 29 joining the podcast to preview Summer League in two-part fashion. Part one coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2018 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so please like this video as you are watching it and tell your friends about the show as well. I'll be joined in a moment by my good friend Glen Willis of ATL and 29 for a two-part edition of the podcast. We do this every year. This is actually going to be part one, and part two will be available in this same podcast feed as soon as part one is finished. With that said, there is one news item to hit on quickly at the top of the show. Not having anything to do with the Hawks doing media on Tuesday. We'll hit on that later on this week if we need to. No huge news out of that. But within only moments, less than an hour after the last episode was posted, episode 2017, David Roddy was waived by the Hawks. If you heard that show, you will know that I referenced on that podcast that it was a chance he could be waived between when I recorded it and when I posted it. That didn't quite happen. I was able to get it up and posted for about 45 minutes, and then he was waived right after that. So no surprise at all. It was kind of funny the way that it all transpired, and my apologies on the timing of that. But there you go. The podcast is relevant for a few hours, and David Roddy no longer on the roster, and the Hawks now have technically two official open two-way slots as I record this podcast on Tuesday evening. All right, the rest of the show will be focused on Summer League. Stay tuned. Here we go with myself and Glen Willis and part one of two. I am joined once again by a great friend of the podcast. This is now basically an annual ritual of some kind. We look forward to it. This is the ultimate sicko content, I would say. A Summer League preview episode in real deep dive fashion. Glen Willis is here. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good, apart from the day job craziness. Been managing a cyber incident since Wednesday and still going on. But this will be a nice break from that craziness. And this is one of my most fun pods that we do every single year. Hopefully, Hawks fans enjoy learning a little bit about the players that are on the roster and what we can expect and all that.
Yeah, I did sort of they announced the roster on Thursday, which is right before July 4th, and I kind of did a 1.5 segment overview of the roster, just to be like, hey, this has got announced, and there was some uncertainty about who's going to play, and I kind of thought it was funny, and I told some front office guys this. They were very cloak and dagger, like I would say unnecessarily so, on who was going to play Summer League and who wasn't. It's like, guys, it's okay. It's not that serious. So that was more of what that was like, hey, this is actually who's going to be there. And then today we'll kind of dig in a little bit more, and I make this joke often, but you are one of the few people actually in the building in Las Vegas that is like really watching all of the basketball. It's definitely like an NBA convention, especially after the first few days. It's like kind of not a diehard. It's really diehards only that are watching, and I know you are. So I appreciate you digging in this preview fashion.
Yeah. Kevin and I talked a little bit on ATL and 29 last night, and I said one of the two things I enjoy the most are going to the small gym and sitting right behind the bench, and because I mean, even now, like, terminology is changing. They're calling the things an offensive action they were calling something 3 years ago. They're calling something different now. So it's a great way to kind of keep up with that. And then the other thing is just to see the players react to the coaching. You can visibly see some guys are processing the coaching instructions just like that. Other guys, especially if this is their first time in the NBA context, what does that term mean? Do I really understand what the coach is asking me to do? But if you take a step back, and I like to pick 3 or 4 teams and watch them through the week and see the players get a little better at the things they're being asked to do from game 1 to game 2 to game 3 to game that's real sicko level stuff. But that's so much fun to see these guys and you have an appreciation for the young players that are really trying to take to heart what they're being asked to do and all that sort of stuff. So if you enjoy, if you're going to just watch kind of flashy stuff or whatever, then have fun. That's a totally fine way to watch basketball. But for me, it's really more around watching these young guys kind of grow right before our very eyes across a week and a half of time or so.
Yeah, this will come up for sure on some of the players to talk about, but I wanted to ask you at the top, like, what people not necessarily should be looking for, but could be looking for, like, what can we learn? Like, how does summer league basketball work? Like, for instance, this is just one example, but I was talking to someone the other day. It's like it's kind of a guard league in summer league. Like, it's kind of hard for some guys to really pop if they're not on ball players in particular. That's like a long held belief. It's like it's basically it's not pickup. Like they're running stuff, but it's not like the same NBA actions that you would normally see run perfectly. All this stuff. So like big picture, like what can you observe? What can we learn about any of these guys as far as summer league is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I think back about like all the different things I've seen across the years that I've been there. The interesting thing is that you watch a team and you can pretty quickly realize kind of what they're prioritizing. Some teams will take their top 2 to 3 players and just trying to get specific types of game experience, certain types of reps for them, and that's what they're prioritizing. On the other end of the spectrum, the Hawks are trying to run concepts and want their players to really kind of buy into that. It feels like as the Hawks put this team together, they really are trying to prioritize players that will come in and buy in, not to just what their individual opportunity is, but what they're trying to run as a team and all those sorts of things. And so you see different things. And some teams are like, hey, we have 2 guys. We're really just trying to develop them. Everyone else is a supportive role and our secondary or tertiary priority. Other teams like the Hawks are trying to build up certain habits and concepts and all that sort of stuff. So it's a mix of, this team might have priorities that look like this. This team might have priorities that look like this, and still enjoyable to kind of watch whatever context the team is trying to emphasize for their team.
Yeah, this is an interesting group the Hawks have, and we'll talk about the players, but they have some older guys. You got some in their upper 20s that have been around, played in a lot of different leagues and settings, and that's helpful. You got guys who are returners to the organization who've been around for a couple years. That know the stuff, know the systems. This is the same, coaching staff that's been there for instance, like Buffkin's entire career. Jurisic has been around. Even someone like Dwight Murray, who's just a College Park guy last season, like has been around, like knows the system very well. I did want to ask you, because it was probably, I joked about it when I did the podcast the other day. The number one thing I got questions about was who wasn't playing. I wonder if you have any thought at all about like Ricochet and Mo Gay not being there. I guess Keaton Wallace too, but Keaton's a free agent, so like we just can't know what's going on there in the same way. But right. Ricochet's playing in France this summer. I'm sure that was part of this too. But Mo Gay, like, were you alarmed? Were you like, hey, I understand? Like, did you have any strong reaction to those guys not coming to Vegas?
I mean, not really. I think for me, when you think about both of those guys, my guess is what they're prioritizing this offseason is strength, developing their body. And if the Hawks felt like, pausing that system, if you will, what they're working through to add muscle, add weight, get stronger, if this would disrupt that, they didn't want that to be disruptive to that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're like, hey, Zach, just keep eating whatever calories a day, stay in the gym, keep lifting, all that sort of stuff. And the same for Mo Gay as well. As he was dynamic at times defensively last year. We think of 7 games or so where he was very impactful defender. In other games where they're going up against a veteran physical team, a little different challenge for him in that way. So I'm speculating here, but my guess is, they're just prioritizing developing their bodies, for those 2 guys. Still wouldn't be surprised if they're both there from a leadership standpoint. Yeah. Some guys who aren't going to play are going to be there and still be vocal and supportive and all that sort of stuff. So it didn't bother me at all. I know the league sometimes will try to put a little pressure, like, can you get Ricochet into one game?
That was my main thing. Like, honestly, the reason why I thought he might go was exactly that. And they're not going to make you take him, but because he was the number 1 overall pick, it's like, hey, maybe a nudge. But I think because he's playing, at least he's on the roster for Eurobasket later this summer. It was like that might have been a lot for him. And with Mo, I mean, go back to what we just talked about a second ago, actually, like with priorities and stuff. It does not strike me as the best environment for Mo Gay to do certain I mean, not that it will be useless for him. I'm not saying that, but like he doesn't really feel like the player that's like best utilized in this set that would get a ton out of this. Like I think he's kind of he has stuff to work on. No one's saying otherwise. But as far as like development, I don't think this is like his best setting. That's my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you get some players who don't really know what they're doing in some cases in this, that which is normal.
Sure.
I continue to joke, like, the number one skill he has to master is learning how to stay on his feet. I mean, when he gets the rebound, he's on the floor a lot, and so that that might be a thing, is creating a stronger lower half of your body and all that sort of stuff. So I do think it's a setting where injuries can happen if you're around a player that's kind of learning what he should be doing and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't bother me at all that either of them aren't playing. Do I enjoy watching those two guys play basketball? I do enjoy watching those two guys play basketball. So, but it's still going to be fun to watch these other guys have opportunity, to come in and show what they can do.
Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt just a little bit easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it absolutely can. Whether you are growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over all of your finances. And Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's instead a complete financial command center. You track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth at the same time. Having all your financial tools in one place makes things easier and more convenient, so you're actually not wasting any time with juggling multiple apps. And if you're anything like me, honestly, you might have a ton of subscriptions piled up, for instance, from the past, whenever you've kind of accumulated along the years, and Monarch Money can help you clean them all up in a very, very fast time period. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. I want to start the player breakdown with a familiar name. We could go with Newell, and we'll get to him, I promise. He's the first round pick. I get it. He's the headliner. But Kobe Bufkin is, for me, the most interesting part of Summer League. That's a combination of somewhat sicko and somewhat like very kind of mainstream. Kobe has been around, and everyone knows he's not been able to stay on the court. That's the big thing with Kobe. He hasn't played in a competitive setting for a long time. He missed last year's Summer League. People have kind of forgotten that. He got hurt during practice before Summer League last year. He ended up playing again during camp, but he basically has been functionally out for a year. Like, he played a little bit in camp, but was never right. And everyone said that. Like, until he had the surgery, he just wasn't 100%. And I wonder, even broadly speaking, what you're looking for from him, because there's a trope that's probably somewhat true about year 3 guys in Summer League. If they don't look good, you start to really worry. And, he's not a typical year 3 guy because he hasn't played that much basketball, but it's also, he probably needs to look good to sort of offset some of the potential concerns. Yeah,
I mean, I wonder how many games he's going to actually play.
Agreed. Yeah,
that's a thing for me. But I think he's, as you and I know, he both has a lot of leadership capacity, and I think that's going to be good. He's a vocal guy. He's a team guy. It'll be good for him to get out there. I hope they play him 2 games at the most. I don't think there's really a need to kind of play him more than that. But it'll be good to kind of see how he's moving, see if he looks like he's 100%, all those sort of stuff. I know if you follow just kind of sort of the social media slice of Hawks fandom, everybody, it seems like 80% is like, I'm out with this guy, that sort of thing. So, which I think is, I mean, I understand fan frustration with a guy who's missed a lot of time. That's, I don't know that that's really unusual. But I still think the Hawks really believe in him. And I think he has a lot of upside. But again, while acknowledging it's going to be tied to his ability to stay healthy.
Yeah, I don't know if I reported or whatever, but I did share on a recent episode that I've heard some good buzz behind the scenes as they start to have practices. There's the informal, workouts that guys are around the facility all the time. Now, they're not all around all summer. Guys want to get away and live other places or whatever, but pretty much the entire time during the summer, somebody's in the building working out, getting ready, playing. There's runs going on. And then around Summer League practice time, they had the formal practice with the team for Vegas, but also a little bit before that, some guys get in. And so I've heard some good things about Kobe. Now, I also said, and I'll say it again now, like, the Hawks are incentivized to say good things about Kobe. So it's not like I'm saying that's gospel. We don't really know, but I haven't heard anything bad. And I do, you just said this, but I do think that they've always liked Kobe. I know Quinn has always been a fan of Kobe's. dating back to the draft. It's a new front office that matters. Ansi wasn't in the building when they drafted him 2 years ago, but I think that the Hawks do believe in Kobe. If I had to say one way or the other, you're right. Like he might be a perfect, 1 or 2 games and done kind of guy. I think if he had been playing the last 2 seasons and been healthy, he wouldn't be playing. I think that's most guys that are first round picks. If they're like in the rotation for a while, at some point, they don't really play in year 3, but because he hasn't played enough basketball, they kind of have to see what they have in him. By the way, a small decision that's not so small for him. By October, they have to choose whether he gets his 4th year team option picked up. And that's a decent amount of money because he's a first round pick. So this won't be the reason that they go one way or the other, but like there are only so many opportunities for the Hawks to see Kobe in a competitive, external scenario. And this is one of them. I mean, of all the guys, I'll probably say this a lot. We tend to overrate Summer League because it's the only thing that we can see. Like, these guys are playing basketball all summer long, and they're developing all summer long other places. But for Kobe, it's like, hey, this is the one time they're going to actually be able to see him. And I would understand it a little bit more if there's a little bit more – pressure's the wrong word, but like if he struggles, there's going to be a reaction. And I would understand. I will always push back on the injury-prone label 2 years in. Like, he's had some injuries, yes, but like we don't know he's always going to be hurt. That's kind of silly to say. But it would be really helpful for him as well. I'll frame it in a positive way. It'd be really helpful for him and the team if he looked good in Vegas and like in the way he's supposed to, basically.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because if you kind of zoom back over to free agency, but if they're sort of evaluating Kobe on like, can we pencil him in as the backup point guard next year? They might want to see him, in this setting. How does he feel? How does he look? Does he look rusty? Does he make it through 2 games without having a freak injury? That kind of thing. And so, I mean, that might be like a 3rd or 4th kind of priority, but they might just want to see him before they make a decision on how they're going to further supplement the guard spot on the roster or not, depending upon what he shows.
I totally agree. And they, again, they're not choosing only based, I will just say this 100 times. They are not going to choose anything based on 1 or 2 games entirely. It's a data point. It's not the entire data point. It's all we can see, but keep that in mind. Like, they're seeing this guy up close in the building and they've been seeing him the whole time. They know where he is way more than we do. Like, if he has a bad shooting game in the first game in Vegas, but the process stuff is good, no one in that building is going to panic about that. Fans will. If he shoots 3 for 16 in his first summer league game on a bunch of good looks, fans are going to be burning the place down. And I think honestly, a company will be like, oh, he, like, process wise, like, he did this well. Yep. And there's a difference there. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just being a little bit more nuanced is probably for the best when it comes to summer league. He's the guy I wanted to lead with, but like, there's a bunch of guards. I actually want to kind of, if you're okay with this, let's talk about the guards, like the guys who had the ball in their hands in some form of fashion. Kobe is, of course, one of them. If I had to guess, the first game you'll see Kobe Bufkin have the ball in his hands, maybe the most of anybody in the first game because he's the returning guy. But they have a bunch of other guys. Like, in no order, you have Nikola Djurisic, their 2nd round pick from last year. You have a guy in Adam Flagler that I was like shocked to see on the roster because he's like really overqualified for a summer league guy. Lamont Butler, who has already been reported to be on a deal of some kind. I've walked this tightrope a little bit, but it may be a 2-way. It may not be. It was reported as one by a bunch of people that cover college basketball, but no one covers the NBA that said that. I don't know, but he's going to be there. I like him a lot. Davon Smith is a guy who's local as well as Flagler's also local. And then Dwight Murray Jr., not a huge prospect, but a guy who was in College Park last year. If you watch the Skyhawks, you would have seen him play a bunch. That's 5 guys who can all like handle the ball and like be comfortable in actions. And I already said it once on this podcast, it's kind of a guard sport in summer league. So do you have a preference as to who we talk about next after Buffkin?
Let's talk about Nico. I mean, it was fun to kind of watch his growth last year. Again, the Hawks really do put a lot of emphasis on the intel they get on will the guy come in and work, will the guy come in and be coachable and those things. And we saw when we saw him in summer league before he got hurt last year, the defense was pretty rough,
Yeah.
And that lined up with what we saw in some of his European play before the Hawks drafted him in the 2nd round last year. But I think the Hawks having a veteran center like Tony Bradley for him to work with really helped him. And shouts to Tony Bradley for his great work across the playoffs with the Pacers. And the Pacers being smart to bring him back. But but that helped. If he had a first year center, for example, and that's why it takes a sicko mindset to do it. If you go look at G League rosters, you'll see that almost all of them have at least one veteran kind of center on there, because you can't have a guy who's still learning how to, set a screen, roll out of the screen, dive to the rim, all the timing, all that nuance and stuff like that. But I would expect we'll see Nico on ball, a good bit as well. And then defensively, he has good size and athleticism. It's a matter of learning kind of the technique and sort of this team scheme stuff to kind of put that athleticism and size to use. So I'm probably as excited to watch him as any player on the roster, just to see how much of the improvement he showed the last maybe 10 games or so he played with College Park, if that's carrying over into the summer or not.
Yeah, it's also a big summer for him. All the things I already said about Kobe Stan as to not putting too much pressure on results. But it's a weird situation. Like, he had the injury last year, pretty much exactly a year ago. He missed 4 months after surgery. He came back, but it's like hard to explain even, like, the path. Like, he signed a G League only contract, which is not something you hardly ever see for a second round pick. And like, he was basically stashed in College Park, which is not what you normally see. But they obviously like him. They drafted him a year ago in the second round with a very similar front office. And he's a talented guy. Like, he's a legitimate 6'7" ball handler. Like, I've seen people that don't know him that well. Like, he's not really a wing. He's really a guard. Like, he played point guard at lower levels. I'm not sure if he's going to be a point guard in the NBA, but he is a guy who's comfortable with the ball in his hands. I would not call him a small forward. I know he has some small forward height, but also a 6'8" wingspan. Like, he's not a huge guy. Like, he's got some thickness to him, but he's not a big, rangy guy. But on-ball talent for sure. Had some big games in the G League down the stretch. Took him a while. Like, if you watch some of that early film, like, I always say I don't watch every G League game, but I did go back and watch a bunch of Djurisic after he came back. It was kind of rough. He hadn't played in a long time. Like, early on, he again, like a 4-month surgery for a 20-year-old coming over. Like, understandable, but it got better, which I like to see.
Yeah, and Kevin would tell you, Kevin, who watches as much College Park as
way more, more than I do for sure.
That when he came back, it looked like he probably came back a little early and wasn't moving that great. Yeah. And so, but they were running out of season, so they get him back on the floor and those sorts of things. He deserves a lot of credit for that. So
yeah, a guy that I'm looking to see a lot is, again, especially if they end up with Kobe not playing the whole week, I think you might see even more of Djurisic as far as like featured, because we just kind of don't know. I do think if I had to guess here in early July, he will be on an NBA contract of some kind this time around.
Yep.
Whether it be a two-way or one of those second round Hinkie special kind of deals. But that hasn't happened yet as we're talking right now. And I'd like to see him in the setting, and just another data point. Like, him being healthy, be big. You're right. Long way to go defensively. The shooting has always been kind of an open question. Like, he's got some stuff to work on, but he is a talented player. So a guy that I don't want to gas up too much, but I think I'm being fair when I say that Adam Flagler is, like, I was surprised to see him on the roster for one reason. This is a guy who was on a two-way for the Thunder the last 2 seasons and, like, played in 37 NBA games last year for the Thunder. Now, a lot of that was mop-up duty because the Thunder were blowing everybody out, but he was on the active roster like almost the whole season with the eventual champion Thunder. He's 25. He can really shoot it, 6'3" guard. Like, I don't know if I think it might be because the Thunder they just have a numbers game there. They have too many players for him to be back with Oklahoma City. But for me, he's like a very obvious two-way player, or even better than that. Like, I think if he's not on a two-way somewhere or better, I'll be surprised. So I was like, wait, why is he on this roster? He's a local guy, which maybe is the reason he ends up in Atlanta. And the Hawks do have if you want to squint, like, they have some guard uncertainty. I don't know if Flagler's a pure point guard, but he's played point guard in college, played there with Oklahoma City. He's more of a scorer than a distributor. But like, for instance, last year, I don't know if you saw the Thunder in Summer League. I know I did a couple times. He averaged like 25 a game last year in Summer League. Like, he averaged 25 a game in the G League too. Like, he's a big time scorer shooter type. Overqualified for being on a Summer League team. We'll see. But have you seen much of him? I know he's not been a Hawk, but have you prepared much for Adam Flagler?
Well, it's you kind of, when you recognize, are they going to bring Garrison back or not? That sort of thing. Could he be a cheap replacement? In that type of in the bench role there, because the shooting is really high level. And he's better on ball than probably some people would realize as well. Not a really high level passer, but I think the thing the Hawks value is the ball doesn't stick. It moves. He's 0.5. He executes 0.5 on the catch. And it's just a pretty high level processor. The thing for him, he's not the biggest guy, and so on defense, so how do you kind of make that work there? That has to come from technique and good team scheme execution, keeping yourself out of bad spots, asking for help when you need it. You get in transition, you get matched up with a 6'10" guy who's going to park you under the rim and try to do that sort of thing. And so he's got to keep himself kind of out of trouble on defense. But the shooting is a true NBA skill. Like his shooting is a true NBA level skill, more so than probably anybody else on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, just to say the number of 41% in the G League from three across 2 seasons, and he shot 40+% in 3 seasons at Baylor where he won the national championship, and like he's basically been a 40% 3-point shooter on some real volume for 5 years now across 2 levels. So that's a real asset. And again, I was surprised to see him, but if you're the Hawks and that guy will sign with you for summer league, like you automatically do it. It's a low bar, but you'll take it. A guy that I know that you are going to like, honestly, is Lamont Butler. I've given the preamble on another show about, I don't know what deal he's going to be on. There's been some mixed reporting, but at the very minimum, I think he's going to be at least in training camp with the Hawks. Maybe it'll be a 2-way. We'll see. But, hard-nosed defender at the guard position is like right up our alley, Glenn. But it's a 5-year guy in college, a winner, high-level guy at San Diego State, Kentucky. I'm interested. I'm assuming you like Lamont Butler as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Venn diagram of Brad and Glenn liking defensive players is almost like a perfect circle, and it's hard for me to decide, like, is Kobe Johnson going to be the best defender on this team, or is Lamont Butler? I mean, Kobe Johnson's more of a wing defender. Lamont Butler's going to be more of a guard defender on ball.
Yeah,
but had a billion steals in his college career. And he's, I think, a little better shooter and playmaker than some people might realize. He's really known for his defense. But he looks like the kind of guy when you watch him on offense, like, yeah, it's up and down, it's there, not there sometimes. But you throw him into an NBA development environment, and they're going to help him kind of, have a process that's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. That stuff. He looks like a guy that could come along pretty well. So he's you hear the term kind of the glue guy, defender, all that sort of stuff. High level, really, really high level defender. It's going to be fun to kind of watch him play there. And I'm anxious to see offensively, is it slow? Is it choppy at first? And then each game, does it get a little bit more smooth along the way? Because as we know, Hawks want to play fast. They want fast decision-making. They want high-level processors. And on defense, his processing is elite, for sure. He really knows what he's doing on that end. And if it's a little choppy on offense, I would encourage fans to understand that that's how it goes. First time in NBA setting and context for some guys. And my hope is that, like, if he plays every game, like game 3, it's like you're starting to see it click a little bit, and because that's usually what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, he's 6'2", probably. He's point guard size, but you're right, a really, really, really good defender. He played on that San Diego State team a few years ago. People might remember this, that are not even college sickos, that made the Final Four, made the title game. I was actually at that Final Four, and was one of their better players. Not ever going to be a super high volume offensive player. He had one big game this year against Louisville at Kentucky, where I think he literally shot 10 for 10 from the field, had 30 points or something like that. Yeah. But that's not what he's going to be. It's more that he can't handle the ball. I was actually looking back a little bit more film of him for Hawks purposes. He's a pretty good ball handler. Like, he's not going to be a dynamic guy, but like, right, he isn't someone that you could just press up on too much. I didn't think, but I don't know if you saw anything there that was alarming or better or whatever.
Yeah, and this is a deep cut, but Brad Rowland never minds seeing Louisville men's basketball take one on the chin.
Yeah, well, that's true, but no, I don't know. I like Butler. I don't. People are going to compare him to Keaton Wallace because that's what happens. Like, you compare the guy to the most recent guy in that kind of mold. I think Keaton is a more talented offensive player than Lamont Butler, but Butler's a better defender than Keaton.
Yeah,
I think. At least at the same age anyway. Like, Keaton's 3 years older, so
yeah. So Keaton, I mean, I'm a huge fan. He deserves a ton of credit for how hard he's worked to kind of develop himself into the player that he is. And and he had there were what 3 or 4 games the Hawks won last year that they don't win except for what he kind of produced in those matchups. So I hope he has a 5 to 8 year NBA career in a supportive role in that 12, 13, 14 spot on the roster. I mean, he's a legit fine 5th or 6th guard for a team depending on how deep you want to go there. Yep. And he's a guy that if you need one more like you have a game where another team's say you're going up against Oklahoma City and you need one more guy to take 8 minutes against Shea or whatever it's going to be, he can handle that stuff. But as you and I know, like you're punting some offense, in that case. But that's a calculated decision a coach can make in a game. Is like, okay, worth the trade off here there. So for me, Butler just looks more fluid with the ball, and so to me, he looks like a guy who could really thrive, since of sustained exposure to an NBA development program, and might surprise some people. But like I said, if fans are like, as sometimes happens, the first quarter of the first game, it doesn't look like super awesome. I'm out on this guy. That's not how it works, at all. Yeah. These guys need time to acclimate to what they're being asked to do. And for Butler, it's going to be playing faster, fast decision making. That's not going to all be there in game one. But like I said, if you're looking for 10% improvement from game 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I like Butler. I think defensively he'll be able to play right away. Offensively is a work in progress, and we'll see how that goes. 2 more guards quickly before we move on to the front court guys. Probably going to be further down the depth chart, may not play a ton, but Davon Smith, another local guy from Grayson High School, was at Georgia Tech for a while. Actually played at 4 major college programs in his college career. But actually led the Pac-12 in assists one year at Utah, like just a weird college career, but a useful player. And then Dwight Murray Jr., who I mentioned before briefly, but a 6-foot guard who was with the Skyhawks last year. So if you're watching the Skyhawks, you probably saw him. Anything to look at with these guys? I think one of them probably just won't play at all, if not both, but because there's just only so many minutes. But What do you make of these guys?
Well, for Devon Smith, I mean, it's the athleticism. He's a real pretty high level athlete. He's not the biggest guy. I think he's 6'1" or so. And but the funniest thing that you go find when you watch him play is like he's a ridiculous rebounder for a guy who's 6'1". It's crazy. Like
he's a great athlete. He really is.
Yeah, he really is. And he has great instincts, as a rebounder, commits to that side, plays hard, plays with a lot of intensity, and those things. Pretty good passer and creator for where he is right now in his career. There's now the NBA level of defense, and so summer league will be a good setting for him, for him to maybe kind of lean into a little bit more of that. But I expect him to play a decent bit of point guard on this team. But he's also just on defense, just a lot of agility. Plays with a nice low center of gravity, generates a ton of ball pressure, stuff the Hawks value. And so I think in that way he's a good fit. I think he's going to play a good bit, and I'm looking forward to watching him play because like I said, that Venn diagram of guys that can defend on ball, that we both like is that should be fun. Hard to know for Dwight Murray Jr. Like what he offers is continuity, right? From last season, and that's really helpful to have on the team. So even if he's not playing a lot, he's there to kind of explain what they're looking for, what they're doing, and stuff like that. So he's a reasonably high floor guy who, like I said, knows the system, knows the scheme inside and out. But the Hawks probably want to get, we'll see, but the Hawks probably want to prioritize more exposure for some of these new guys to see what they have and don't have in these new guys.
Yeah, I would guess that's true. And I think, having a bunch of guys who can handle the ball is always a good idea in summer league. Like if you shut down Kobe, for instance, after a couple games, somebody gets an injury, you don't ever want to get in a spot where you don't have you have no point guard play, because you just have to have it in summer league for everybody else. Like to evaluate everybody else, you kind of need guys who can at least function at point guard. And having 5 of them on this roster is probably the reason why they're doing that, I would guess. All right, that is all for part 1 of this 2-part chat with myself and Glen Willis. Part 2 should be available in this same podcast feed right now, so please stay tuned. Please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my non-podcast work as well at patreon.com/BT Rowland. One more time, part 2 available right now, and we'll see you all next time.